Right. So you're talking about something, and this is like just a. So you're talking about something where if that light is like shining through the glass window kind of thing,
Yeah.
and the window itself is grainy, or it's
Like the whole scene.
okay. So it's probably the whole scene is probably. Let me make a new scene because this one is like always grainy and always looks terrible. All right, so I'm just gonna make a cruddy little box. Punch out a window. All right, so I'm just gonna go into, if I go into my modeling menu, I'll just do mesh, edit mesh, extract. It's gonna separate this little window, and now I can extrude it as a sad little piece of glass. All right, so material, surface, and transmission is 0. Cool. All right, so I think I'm just gonna throw in a. What am I doing? It's Redshift. See what happens to the physical sky. So, render view. All right. So that. Oh. Psh. All right. Well, for one, I should probably set my window to be transparent, which I still always forget to do. So I'm just gonna uncheck opaque. All right. So it's like kind of grainy, gross looking, similar to this maybe. I'll bump the exposure on this up a lot. All right. So you're talking like, you're kind of getting this. This is like more or less the grain that you're getting on your whole image.
Yeah.
Okay. So just for grins, I'm gonna see what happens when I render one TIFF. I want to compare this to not having the glass there. So this is like still pretty grainy even without the glass. So it's probably what you need to do is just go in and like bump the samples of whatever light you're using, in this case my physical sky, up a little bit more. And that should theoretically help reduce the sampling. Functionally speaking, let me see just for some reason if the portal light decides that it's a great idea to work in this particular scene, because I would be very excited by that. But that might be an instance where a portal light would kind of fix some of those issues. So, because again, basically, the issue is happening because it's casting light from all over your scene. So even like over here, where the walls are just solid, it's still trying to light it, and it's still like effectively casting a shadow. And those shadows are usually what ends up causing the graininess. So, go back to my render angle and see. I'm like really hoping that the portal light actually works in this one because portal lights are kind of awesome. So in this case, you can see that that did actually fix a lot of the graininess that was there. And for some reason, yeah, now the portal light is working, and I'm kind of salty about it. But so here's like with the glass. Anytime you put glass there, it's going to take a tiny bit longer to render, just because it's calculating transmission and stuff on the glass. But I mean, you can see, so I'll save. It's also rendering, like, it's A, less grainy with the same render settings, and B, it took like half the time to render, which is why I like portal lights. So I'm gonna just save this real quick and render to TIFF. And because it's a TIFF, I should be able to actually open it on the computer. So like here's the original image. You can see this is like super grainy and disgusting. And then okay, well that's didn't save well in the slightest. Why does the universe hate me? All right, so less grainy. I'm just gonna cheat and pull up the render window. Haha. And half the render time, and it looks way better. So yeah, so I mean, it's probably not the glass. It's probably just the shadows from were you actually using like a dome light or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So try bumping the samples up on that, and if you need to set them to something past like 3 or 4, try adding portal lights, and that probably will fix many of the issues. If that still doesn't work, let me know, and I can take a look at your files.
Is there a lot of difference if I have glass actually there, or there's
I depends, I guess, on the settings that you use for the glass and the shape and/or color of the glass. So I'm thinking of something like, if it were a stained glass window, like having that glass would totally, like I would totally advise putting glass in that.
Yeah, just like a clear window.
Yeah, so in that case, it's probably not doing a whole lot. I would say throw it in there anyway, especially if you're having a shot that actually shows the window. Just because, like, or if you're getting, like, really close to the window, it might show a little bit of difference in there, especially, like, around the edges of the glass, but yeah, it's probably, unless you have, like, one of those really old windows where the glass is sort of melting, most renders, it's probably not going to make a huge difference. Fun fact, in case anyone didn't know this, glass is actually a liquid, and over time it slowly, like, oozes downwards. It's very weird. Anywho, any other questions about any of the stuff that we went over? One more time? You said, when's the best time to use a portal light? So I usually use them personally if, like in this case, if you have a closed room with an HDR, and that all of the room is like super blurry, and you'd have to set your samples up to like 30 to make it not blurry, because that's going to take forever to render for no reason. So in that case, again, it's like closed room with like 1 or 2 windows where, and that's the only place you want the light to shine through. Totally use a portal light. Like in this case, again, you have this first really hideous render. As soon as I threw a portal light in with the same sampling settings, it cut the render time pretty much in half and also looks way better. So if you're having sampling issues with your HDR, definitely try a portal light. Otherwise, you could also, I suppose, use them. I've never like functionally tried this because I've just never had a need to, but I suppose you could also use them like if you wanted to just sort of light an object. Like if I was for some reason like very adamant about lighting a sphere or something, I'm just actually curious to see if this works at this point. Oh, right. All right, so I'm just gonna put in a very ugly ground plane. Put in a very ugly ground plane. I was thinking you could use it like if you wanted to still get the HDR effect on your light, but not get the full HDR, if that makes sense. So here's my crappy light, and this is just me completely spitballing this as I go. All right, so here is lighting based off of the very bright physical sky that I have in the scene. If I unhide my portal light, you can see that it's still projecting like the color from this physical sky. It's just directing it at a certain part of my ball. So I suppose you could use it if you wanted to like pick out certain lights in your HDRI. Like if you had something that you felt particularly strongly about, but you know, there was like one really weird light, or like you only wanted one really interesting colored light, conceivably you could use that. Oh yeah, I also did say I was going to turn off your stuff, but does that sort of answer your question? Yeah. Okay. So really quick, I'm just going to grab this really horrendous looking HDR that I have. So, whoop, my bad. So by default, this one's actually not completely horrible, but it's like kind of funky looking. Again, if you just wanted to isolate a certain part of that light, what happens if I make this chrome? I'm feeling like chrome is a good idea in this case. You could totally use a portal light to do that. I'm also just partially curious what happens if I make this chrome. Fantastic. This is a very weird HDR. All right, so I'm gonna turn on the portal light. And you can see that it's still lighting my scene. In this case, it looks really bizarre because it's chrome, so I just get like a really hot sort of highlight on the side of that. I mean, it does make it very obvious how this is working. It's basically just an area light with a part of an HDR in it. But if you ever wanted to, just direct certain light, you could do it like that. So yeah. The other thing, excuse me, that I said that I was going to go over, if you want to turn off your sky dome, like if I don't want this horrible looking thing to render in the background of my sphere, I'm going to turn off my portal light, and you just want a chrome ball just floating around. If you go under, where is it? Visibility. So I'm clicking on the settings of my dome light. Scroll down to visibility tab, and if you turn off, set the camera visibility to 0, it's just not going to render that. It should render with an alpha behind it. If you, again, ever just need to like comp a chrome ball into a scene or something like that, you can turn off the HDR. Or, incidentally, if you're, for practically speaking, for your finals, if you have an HDR that you really like for the lighting and it's doing great stuff for like the mood of your scene, but it's either like really blurry and gross looking, or it just has like a weird perspective image that you don't want in the background, like if it's supposed to be, you know, a ground floor thing, like ground floor space you're making and there's like giant city turrets in the background, you could use it for lighting, set it so that it's not rendering in your scene, and then just like throw in a random texture background that makes more sense with your scene. You can also, you know, set it to render or not render in like your specular highlights or your diffuse, etc. So you can play with a bunch of this stuff. But yeah, any questions on that? All right. Any other random questions about random things? Cool.